What's going on, guys? SeeJay here, back with another video for the Lord of the Rings Heroes of Middle-earth. I wanted to continue my series I started like a week or two ago, where I was breaking down what I consider the top 5 characters of each of the 4 subclasses, you could say, that are built into the game. You have supports, tanks, healers, and attackers, DPS, whatever you want to call them, that are all tagged in the game. Now, some of them are kind of funky. Perfect example here would be Road to Rivendell doesn't actually have a healer tag because they actually mark Pippin and Merry both as supports. Most of the like kind of 5 character team comps have a tank, a support, a healer, and then like 2 DPS. Maybe some comps have like 2 supports and 1 DPS, but generally speaking, you're gonna have kind of like that normalized sort of comp team builds. Whereas Road to Rivendell doesn't have a healer, and I would just generally classify Pippin as a healer. And in my support video, or sorry, this is my support video, in my healer video, people were asking like, hey, like, where's Pippin? He's like one of the best healers in the game. And while I agree he's a very, very good healer in the game, especially on a new account or a free-to-play account, he's actually not a healer in the game. And I didn't want to start making kind of assumptions and saying, well, he's not really a healer, or he's not really a support, he's a healer, so I'm just gonna like make the tweak to say he's now classified as X. I just wanted to keep it black and white, how the game has listed it. There's other characters that kind of fall into weird buckets, but anyways, if you haven't seen them, I've already done a video on top 5 tanks and a video on top 5 healers. Today I'm gonna do top 5 supports, and later on this week, you can expect to see my top 5 DPS video. So let's go ahead and dive into it. All right, guys, so for the top 5 supports plus a couple bonus picks, I generally classify this bucket of heroes as probably one of the strongest subclasses in the game, probably just above tanks. I think tanks and supports currently, as the game stands with the hero pool we have, as some of the best characters in the game, the ones that like you're generally going after. Surprisingly, DPS doesn't have like a huge benchmark of characters. There's obviously some really strong ones in the DPS category, but it kind of like tapers off quickly. I would say support, like as you can currently see just on my screen here as we're looking at the game, there's some really notable characters in here, and there's only 18 support. So when you're looking at this, you have 10 here on my screen. I would probably say like Morza isn't really a top 10, but obviously Isengard's a great early team and one of the characters I kind of built out early on into the game when I started playing Heroes of Middle-earth. But you got your top 5 up here, all of which are very, very strong characters. Your Arwyns, your Biffers, your Balin, your Bekaloo, your Lady Eowyn. Then you got your Merry and Pippin kind of comp. You got Bilbo, which really hasn't been playtested too much from a lot of people because he's not really farmable, and now he's just kind of MIA in the game because he doesn't exist anymore. And then obviously you got your strong Goblin picks with Goldbergs and Grey Goblin. And then you have Denethor, which is a fantastic character for Gondor if you wanted to build the Gondor squad, which is strong in one of the chapters in the raid, and as well as just I think going to be a really strong comp for Gondor in PvP whenever we get multi-squad, if we ever get multi-squad. So you can see like the list goes on. There's some very, very strong characters specifically in this bucket of characters. Similar to Tank I thought had quite a bit too, but point being, it's a strong subclass in the game with a lot of good heroes to kind of dive into. A lot of them have leadership abilities. Actually, all the way at the bottom when you get to it, you got Gandalf in this bucket too. So I mean, there's just some really good characters. But if we were going to look at like my top 5, plus I have a couple of bonuses in here, for me, in the list that I have, my number 5 on this is going to be Biffer. So I consider Biffer to be a pretty strong character. He's a Thorin's Company character. He's a leader, or has a leadership ability for Thorin's Company. We know the dwarves are a strong comp because you have obviously our latest legendary, which was Thorin, which whenever we get him back, cool, if we ever get him back. But of course, like, we're kind of going on the assumption that at some point in time this game lives on. I'm not going to dive into the constant just BS of talking about the game's longevity and why am I making content and yada yada yada. I set out some goals for myself. One of them was that I wanted to make videos every single day. We're already kind of losing that a little bit just because there's not a lot to make in this game. So I do want to continue and finish my top 5 series. I do want to finish my raid series, which I really am kind of slacking on that. I did, I think, just chapter 3 like a couple of weeks ago and never even did 1, 2, or 4. So I got to go back and finish 1, 2, and 4 just to have the guides on my channel in case anyone's ever looking for it, specifically from me and my input. And then I want to do a couple more team comp builds. So I did the Haradrim. I do want to do like Road to Rivendell, etc., etc., right? So gonna kind of continue doing some of the plans that I had in place, but given the state of the game, we see my content now is going to be a little bit more spread out to a couple of videos a week versus probably making a video every single day. It does suck. It's something I wanted to do, but it is what it is. You know, we're just kind of in the waiting period. So the minute we ever get an update of any sort that doesn't have an update saying the game's being sunset and closed, as long as the game is, you know, silent and or continuing, or under the assumption the game's continuing, I'll continue supporting the game and playing it every single day, just because, well, one day they could come back, and the day they come back, I'm going to be ready. I've been doing my farms as if the game has a plan in place, right? So if you're having fun playing the game, I recommend doing the same thing. I wouldn't just stop playing the game and saying, oh, they haven't made anything, I'm going to stop, because your average player is not on YouTube, is not on Reddit, is not in Discord. They're just playing the game, and they're not really noticing that there's nothing new in the game. Probably to some degree with like the no pop-ups, the nothing to buy in the store, the no calendar. Some of those are going to bring a little bit of like, what's going on to maybe a slightly above average player. But the average person who's probably logging into this game, not even daily, is not really thinking about those things. You know, I am averagely playing a lot of other gacha games in this point in time just to find something that sticks. And if I suddenly logged into like Marvel Strike Force and something stopped showing up, I wouldn't know, because I'm a casual player in that game. I wouldn't know that pop-up stopped coming up, or one of the 6 login daily calendar things just no longer existed. Like, I wouldn't know any of that because I'm playing it super casually. And even as a super casual Marvel Strike Force player, along with Swigo and a bunch of other little nuanced games I'm just kind of like dabbling in for 5-10 minutes a day, or every other day, or a couple times a week, all those games I've already put more than probably your average person into, because I've joined their Discord and I might peek in there once a week. I've watched YouTube content creators to just get general guides of the direction of the game, the new stuff, the best heroes. Those are things that a person doesn't honestly do that often. So you got to keep that in mind. Like, if you're watching my video and you're watching a bunch of other content creators in the home space or just in general on YouTube, the average person is not doing that, right? So you got to keep that in mind. The fact we have silence is annoying and it sucks, but that's not exactly what is really like hitting 75% of the player base, if not more, right? We're like the niche community of people that are following it every single day and just really min-maxing the accounts and know exactly what is going on and what we're supposed to have and we don't have, right? So anyways, not to rant on, I just wanted to make that point that you can expect content still from this channel. You might see some content that might, and if it's not interesting to you, feel free not to click on it and have no interest. If you want to click on it just because you're kind of curious what I'm doing with my time, I might sneak a couple of videos on the channel over time. Again, I'm not going to try to like make this a super diverse channel. I wanted to keep it pretty much Lord of the Rings home, but again, if the game dies, like, I mean, what am I supposed to do, right? There's no game left, right? But what I've been playing. So if you're interested in kind of seeing some of the games I have played and my perspective on it, whether you're a player of that game and you found it interesting and you want to see like a new player's perspective, like what is it like coming into it, I can make sort of like first impression guide, like not guide, but like first impression video of, oh, I've never played Marvel Strike Force. What do I think of it as a person who's playing it for the first time? And then also some newer games that maybe none of you guys have ever even played yet, like King Arthur, Legend Rise. I've actually found that game so far to be pretty fun. I've kind of like dabbled in it and then not played it and then played it and not played it. So I've made some decent progress in the game, but I haven't really like committed to playing it daily, logging in, collecting all my rewards, etc. Still in beta, so whatever I do anyways won't stick. As far as I know, at least, it's going to be reset when the game officially launches. The problem with the game is I've watched some of the content creators just to kind of get a feel for like what is the actual excitement behind the game. It seems like there's not a lot of excitement behind it, which makes sense because the IP is like not insane like a Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or like Marvel, DC, etc. So it makes sense it doesn't have like an insane amount of IP behind it that people are like, oh my god, King Arthur, right? Like I gotta play this. So without like a ton of advertising, it might just not really stick that strong. Also, just I guess from the latest update, there's been some change to the way the gearing works in the game. Not going to dive into all that right now. We're already on like a super tangent here, 10 minutes into my video to talk about the top 5 supports. So I apologize if you were here for that. I'll make sure I timestamp it. So if you have no interest in listening to anything I just said, you just want to find out my 5 heroes, we will go ahead and dive into it now. So anyways, Biffer was on my list as number 5. He's obviously and some of the things I considered here too when I kind of place these guys is like how farmable they are. That's like a 5% decision in my kind of hierarchy here is, you know, their farmability. Most of these characters are super farmable, which makes them very good because they're good characters and anyone can really get their hands onto them. The only one that's probably on here that's not super easy to get is, you guys are probably guessing already, and we'll get to him at some point. But my number 5 is Biffer. Obviously, he is now a guild shop, so super easy to get. I'm already working my way on to getting him to 6-star, and I actually stopped on him for a while. So he's very much coming along quickly. You'll also see a trend here. Most supports kind of offer very similar sort of abilities within one of their abilities. Some have better versions than others, but almost all of them are going to have a Bane cleanse. So we probably don't have to just like continuously repeat that across all the characters. Just know that almost every single one of these characters have a Bane cleanse, which is super strong for a lot of the raids and just in general to have the ability to kind of just take off a negative thought, like a debuff on your character, right? Like those are just naturally going to be strong abilities and kind of makes sense for a support to be able to do such things because they are supporting your team by removing debuffs and giving buffs, right? So a lot of these characters are going to be buffers and debuffers. But yeah, like his leadership ability is honestly probably A tier, S tier. I don't remember where I placed him on my original tier list for best leadership abilities in the game, but I think he was A tier. And if you haven't seen that, if you're interested, obviously I made a video on like the tier list for the best leadership abilities in the game. A lot of these characters have leadership abilities. And so if we're looking at him, his is like a defensive and a might kind of granter to the team, and then also grants counterattack. So he's just like a very defensive plug and play character. Like you can kind of use him in just random team comps outside of just strictly the dwarf comp or strictly a Thorns company comp. So I actually use him, and even at a pretty low 5,000 power gear score, it's just kind of like a plugger in some of the raids if I need somebody with some of these sort of features like Bane cleansing or defensive or just keep my team alive, right? So Biffer is a reasonable character and definitely on my top 5 at number 5. Number 4 is going to be Miss Arwen herself. So we all know Rivendell Elves is probably one of the strongest teams in the game, and she is by far one of the, you know, she's obviously core 4, right? You have the Rivendell 5. Lomian is sort of a stretch pick. You can kind of use him, you can kind of sub him out for Naramari or potentially another character, but generally speaking, your core 4 are almost always together, and the core 4 obviously being your Elrond and then your trio of Arwen, Elladan, Elber here. So Arwen, again, support character, has a lot of stuff going on in her kit. She is obviously one of the more kind of sought after characters in terms of a new player because she is very late into the campaign. So if she was probably like an earlier unlock, I might have had her higher than number 4, but because she's going to be one of the characters you're really attacking and maybe one of your last unlocks in this game from a node farming perspective, she's at number 4 for me. But again, you know, she hits surprisingly hard for her support. You can actually build her to be more of like a DPS support. So she does offer obviously the support aspects of, you know, some healing, you know, some Bane cleansing, some turn meter manipulation, some boon dispel, some regeneration, just like tons of good supporty buff debuff features, along with just being like actually a pretty good hard hitting character. So for me, she's number 4 on my list. Number 3, and I'm moving a little quick because I kind of tangented on for quite a while in this video and I don't want to make this video super long. So number 3 is kind of a duo pick. It's technically Pippin. Pippin is going to be my number 3. But Merry and Pippin are almost always duo together. In almost any comp, you're almost never going to separate them. So even if you don't run Road to Rivendell 5 as a team that you're kind of just using as a holistic 5, you know, full team, if you were to put Pippin anywhere else to kind of flex into a team comp, so like maybe took bits and pieces of like Haradrim or bits and pieces or like Rohan Trio, you're almost always going to have Pippin and Merry. You're almost not going to want to separate the two. I don't have them really fully built out, Road to Rivendell. My hopes, and I'll make another video probably later this week as well on like kind of like account progress update, because honestly with just nothing going on in this game, I've made some significant progress and we're getting close within a couple of weeks to where a lot of what I went after, like when I set my mindset back in late December, early January, so a month and a half, almost 2 months ago now, or yeah, actually 2 months ago now, they were small goals that I was after that almost all of them are getting pretty close to accomplished because I didn't really anticipate that we would have nothing new, right? So it was like, oh, these are my goals. They're going to take time to get because when the new shiny thing is released, I'm probably going to pivot some resources into being able to farm those guys to some degree, or as characters that were marquee characters should have been now put onto nodes or somewhere in the game to farm. Example being Orphan, Rumil, etc. I assumed some resources would go into them at this point in time in the game, and it hasn't happened. So I've been able to just kind of farm the characters that I've been wanting to farm 2 months ago, and they're getting closer and closer to like hitting 7-star or G8ing or whatever, right? And so I'll make a video specifically on that to kind of talk about the progression I've made on my account over the last, I made one a couple of weeks ago. I'll make another one to kind of give an update. But long story short, a lot of my characters are getting to a good point. So I'm gonna need some of your guys' thoughts on that video onto like what I should really go after next. Like if there's a team specifically you want me to build out while we have this flex time, I can certainly dive into a team that's just random and like you're interested to see how they perform, or should I just use my resources to build out the remaining teams that I have? It's probably the most efficient is to just get 5 full raid ready teams. But while we're in this little bit of like a pickle of the game, I don't mind kind of taking maybe a little bit of a kind of a sidestep that might not be best for my account, but while I'm able to do it, do I build Dunland? Do I build Mordor? Do I build some random team, Gondor, right? Like just other teams that maybe not a lot of the people have put investment into, just kind of see like, oh, maybe they're stronger than a lot of people thought. But anyways, Pippin and Merry, super strong together. A lot of people know this combo. A lot of people have Road and Rivendell because, well, they're pretty easy to farm. Obviously, Pippin is going to be a guild campaign, early node farm. A lot of people are going to get him pretty much within the first couple days of playing the game. Along with also Merry, right? Merry is a Shadow Campaign 3-1, so pretty early on too. You probably get him within the first week or two of the game. Both, again, very, very strong together. They have duo synergies where, again, Pippin is a support, but has old Maggot's Mushroom, which is like just your generic strong heal that most other healers kind of give in this game. So, again, very similar to a healer type character, but is classified, as you can see, as a support, but really should be a healer. Some notes over here. So again, huge healer, has a boon dispel and a regen to all if you have Merry, and it has a might to all, which I don't think requires Merry, but pretty nice, obviously buff to your team. Then has a Bane cleanse on turn, but it's random, so it's pretty strong, right? Because every turn you have a Bane cleanse up for Pippin, but it's random, so like it might not hit the right character you want, which obviously the RNG kind of sucks too. It's not like it's a Bane cleanse to everybody. And then Merry, another reason why Merry's really strong, like outside of it being Merry being good for Pippin because you're getting that regen to the whole team. Merry is huge for Pippin because it offers immunity and always prioritizes assisting Pippin whenever Pippin's attacked, right? So like there's always like kind of that counterplay that is sort of the duo is constantly supporting one another. So very, very good kind of combo team, Merry and Pippin. So I have them here as my number 3. Number 2 is going to be a character I actually don't have any kind of use with yet. I'm still struggling to really, not struggling now. I wasn't on a good raid team for a while until I found a good raid team, which is Hands of Hulk that I'm a part of today. And then I was a part of kind of like the lower end of the 5 or 6 guilds within Pants of Hulk cluster. So we weren't really getting too much Gandalf shards for quite a while on my account. I think it was like 5 per week as we were getting, and I might have got a couple on my own in my personal track. Now that I'm a part of like a higher end guild within Pants of Hulk for my account, we're getting always 15. If we probably didn't have a lot of this BS going in the game, we'd probably already be pushing into chest 5 consistently. And then my personal rewards are getting better and better every week as my account's getting stronger and stronger. So we're starting to get some personal rewards. So I do think now Gandalf is a few weeks out before I get him, versus before when I was getting like 5 a week for a few months, like up until probably within the last couple of weeks. I mean, just very, very slow grind, which is probably like pretty standard for most people in the game. They probably don't have Gandalf. Again, your very niche hardcore community has Gandalf. Your average player does not, right? Because I consider myself more than an average player. And now I'm in a much, much more of an average guild, right? Like not guild as in like my 36 members, but obviously the cluster is, got multiple guilds. But now I'm in a bigger guild, whereas for a while I was in like, still a big guild, but like lower end. I'm not going to, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? So anyways, Gandalf, I have him as number 2. Fellowship character. He's the leader of them. He's, I think, the only character in the game that actually has like what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 abilities. Most characters have 5 or 4, so he's like kind of the anomaly there too. But he's pretty much a legendary, right? Like he's a raid unlock. He's like a legendary. You just aren't locked to a marquee event to get him. You can get him whenever. You just are locked behind your raid scores and waiting weekly to get him. So very strong character. I think he's already really good with the Fellowship built out, like Gimli Legolas and himself. Obviously, about the state of the game situation, I think if the other 2 Fellowship members are added to the team at some point in time, this team is going to be really, really good, because the 3 of them are already really strong with just 2 randoms added to the squad. So just imagine like a full Fellowship team. And you'd expect some power creep because as characters are released, they're generally stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, which your like original release characters in 5 years from now would kind of be shit, besides a handful that might just always be okay because of what they offer. So this will end up being a very, very strong team down the road, especially when we get the other fellowship members added to the squad. But again, looking at him specifically, his Istari's Gift, which is like his, I think his leadership technically, yeah, Istari's Gift. So this one's cool because it kind of just like bounces around and it's kind of a cool concept in design. So the way it works is this character grants Istari's Gift to a random ally whenever he uses any of his abilities while no other ally has Istari's Gift. So it just kind of bounces, and it's kind of a cool, it's a cool ability. You know, again, it does just a lot of stuff, right? I'm not going to dive in because this video is already way too long, but essentially this passive in his leadership is super good, super strong. And he does a ton of great healing across his kit. And he just kind of like literally offers everything, right? Like he kind of has a little bit of everything. He has a Bane Cleanse like you'd expect from pretty much any other support. He also has Eagle Eye and Protection, and this is to all. I think it might be Fellowship, but if you max it up, it might be to all regardless of the tag of Fellowship. He has a Burn that also has a Stun. So, I mean, that's amazing, right? You get the Burning stack, which is just a flat DPS of like 10%, no matter what their HP is. So just huge damage, especially in the rage situation. And then a stun, like stun's just awesome. So getting a stun and a burn on the same ability. And like I mentioned, just he's a big healer too. So like as a support character, he's actually an insane healer. So all around kind of has everything to offer. He's definitely like a power creep type character, but makes sense. He's a legendary. I consider him a legendary. And then number one, I mean, you could probably mix him up there with number one, but really the problem with him is like, he's just really hard to get. Like unless you're a top 5%, even maybe less top 5%, top 1% character player in this game, you don't have Gandalf. So most players don't have Gandalf, so they're never going to really experience Gandalf for quite a long time. So because of that, it makes it difficult to really put him as number one, because although he's a sought after character, most people are not going to actually ever end up getting him. So I have him at number two. Number one, I actually have Lord Balin. I think Lord Balin is like the epitome of a power creep character. And you can see it if you see a lot of like guides and telling you characters that you should really, you can use this guy as like a 3-4 star, minimal investment, you know, having some of these at 4s, maybe 6, depending on like, you know, if you're really trying to min-max him in your raids. He's just like a power creep character. I kind of feel the same way with Bomber. Again, the problem with Bomber is just the fact that like he's not really farmable for the most part, right? So like he's not as easy to consider when you're like looking at the full rosters, because you just like, we don't have that consistent cadence of where they end up in the game, right? For like your average player to be able to just now farm Bomber instead of having to like pay to win for the Bomber to have max stars, etc. But you can see like I've seen comps, not to tangent on a Bomber, but I've seen comps where you have like a G9 level 60 gear tier 4, or I'm sorry, gear 9 level 60 star 4, and a Bomber's just popping off, right, with like max abilities and stuff like that in PvP. Super good, right? So like you don't need the 7 stars to make him like obviously work, but can you imagine if he's as good as he is as a 4-star, would he be at like 7-star? And so Balin's like the same case. Like you can have like a 4-star Balin and he can be used in your raid teams and be effective. So when you have like a maxed out Balin, like all in over 10k 12 13k power, like this guy is going to be nuts. So anyways, like he's one of those characters you don't have to put a ton of investment into, and he's really good. He has probably one of the best leadership abilities with the Lord of Moria. It works for dwarf, and a lot of his synergy is great too, because he works for dwarves and elves, and he's insane in the Balin's expedition with Orphan, Rumil, and Balin as like the core 3 together, because there's a lot of stuff in his kit that just like makes it so they get like 100% turn meter and just like a lot going on specifically for those two characters. But just in general, like he's just an insane plug and play character, and he recently, now it's been months, but like one of the last characters to move off of farmability into just like campaign 2.7, so like super easy to farm. And again, he has your typical stuff, right? Bane cleansing, regen, etc. So Balin for me is definitely number one. And then just a couple of bonus picks here that I have on my list, and we'll just kind of round this out because this video's gone way too long. A lot of people are probably surprised not to see Lady Awen on my list. She's a super early campaign farm character at light 1.5, or I'm sorry, Shadow 1.5. She's really good. She's insane with her own trio. Her leadership is probably the worst in the game with the whole crit chance, but only on counter attacks. It's like terrible. Like it's literally horrible. So like really you would never even use it, and you'd only ever use it with the Rohan if you just had a Rohan squad. So if they ever made a legendary, another light legendary, they could certainly have a Rohan tag legendary who could just have leadership ability and straight up replace Lady Awen's. but she's a very, very good pick. Obviously, a lot of people would probably consider her in the top 5. I have her just outside of top 5 in my list. And then the last one I have here, I mean, you could kind of like also include like a Denethor as like a bonus because again, leadership of the Gondor, very defensive team. Golbers is an awesome character for the goblins because it has poison and bleeds plus a summon. So cool characters. But the last one I have is Bekaloo. And I have Bekaloo. I'm a Haradrim fan, so I'm going to include Bekaloo somewhere on my list. But guild campaign, super easy to farm. Poison stacks, which are fantastic with like the whole synergy of the Black Serpent poison combos. And then her passive is pretty cool because they do the whole passive sharing, and where it just it just scales infinitely. When there's a character with no boon, it does X amount of damage increase, right? Like damage percent up to like 15 or 20% spread to everybody, right? Because everyone shares the passive as a Haradrim if you're running Tabeb. So really cool character. I love like the design of it, the passive sharing kind of design for Haradrim. And again, I'm a big Haradrim fan, so just in general, I have to include Bekaloo somewhere because I need Bekaloo on my list. But anyways, that is my list. That's my top 5. I'm sorry I ranted on for the first 10 minutes of this video, just bitching and telling you guys what my plans are for the game. But if you're interested, obviously take a look at what I had to say, and I will timestamp it. So if you're just interested in my top 5, you can just kind of click along and be done my video. Sorry, I'm kind of talking quick here too. I'm trying to round it up because I got to get going to run some errands on this Monday payday off. So pretty exciting. So anyways, see you guys in the next one. Bye.